Lower class and social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force them air. Fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Laugh to your face, fight and die, 'cause God will give. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower class and social side, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See the shit, force a bear. Fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one leaves countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Rock the Boat right here on UCY.tv. It is the 18th of October, 2016. And you can't make this stuff up, right? You just can't make it up. I mean, I just can't imagine what our forefathers would be thinking if they were here right now. They'd be smacking us up the head or something. Like, are you people this incredibly stupid? Apparently we are. Anyways, the ridiculousness just keeps coming at us, and it's all coming out of the United Nations. Here we have a story, and a historic land deal with the Algonquin peoples signed by federal and Ontario governments. Indigenous Affairs Minister Carolyn Bennett and her Ontario counterpart have signed a historic agreement with the Algonquins of Ontario that will eventually see wide swaths of eastern Ontario signed over to the Indigenous people as part of a modern treaty. A modern treaty. The governments of this so-called country have treated the Indigenous people like pieces of garbage since the get-go. The history of the Native people here by the corporate government is absolutely disgusting. We slaughtered them. We slaughtered their food source. We slaughtered their buffalo. We stole their children. We put them into government corporate schools, destroyed their society. It was a mass genocide in North America against the Native people. The Native people here, and I had to teach her, she wasn't on the show, but I talked to her a lot. And she is taught in Native schools, mainly in Alberta and Saskatchewan, basically her entire teaching career. And when she's describing the living standards in these reserves, it's absolutely disgusting. Now, did the corporation/government do anything? We hear stories constantly about lack of housing, lack of clean water, and each of these Indigenous affairs. It used to be called Indian affairs. Now it's Indigenous affairs. Do they ever get anything done on any of these reserves? No. And when they do put the money to the reserves, it falls into the hands of the chiefs because the chiefs are working with the corporation. and it's bloody sick. So now this modern treaty, which is straight out of the United Nations, this is about driving people off the land and into the cities. The government doesn't give a sweet bejesus if every indigenous or native died tomorrow morning. They don't give a damn. They're playing the native people against the rest of the population. They're playing the Muslims against the Christians. This is all out of the UN. And people better wake up to it. So here's the deal. Here's the deal. These people are all, they should all be just hung from a tree somewhere, somewhere. They deserve to be hung, actually. Anyways, Indigenous Affairs Minister Carolyn Bennett and her Ontario counterpart signed a modern treaty. The deal encompasses roughly 36,000 square kilometers of land. That'd rough out to about 20,000 square miles, be fairly close. So if you're in the States, it would be 20,000 square miles. And you guys in the States are complaining about the what's it called? The BLM or whatever it's called. So we're just going to saw off 20,000 square miles or 36,000 square kilometers, stretching from Ottawa, which just happens to be the federal seat of power in this so-called country, to North Bay, including large parts of the Ottawa Valley. Now, that's where I grew up. Parliament Hill itself falls into the catchment area. Now, that is where the Parliament building sits. That's where the federal government sits. And apparently, they cut a treaty that there's 36,000 square kilometers that they're going to hand over to the Algonquins. The very seat of the federal government is involved in this. Now, you got to say, well, how bright are these people? They're going to hand over 36,000 square kilometers of land, and the very federal seat of power is involved in this catchment area. Bennett said that all the land in private hands would be left untouched, and the bulk of the territory to be assumed by Algonquins will be Crown-owned. Signing her with her was Ontario Indigenous Affairs Minister David Zimmer. Now, the problem here is that there's a lot of people living in that 36,000 square kilometers, including the federal government. Now, what's going to happen here is that they want the wildlife, they have the A to A, the Algonquin to Adirondack, so the moose can migrate back and forth unimpaired. Only problem is moose don't migrate. They did do a story I read on air one time where a moose, I forget what the moose's name was, it was a lady moose, had somehow been found, from the Adirondacks, had been found dead in Algonquin Park. And this was part of the push to make these great, clear runways with no people living in them so that the animals could travel unhindered from one place to the other. Except moose don't migrate. So how this moose got from Adirondack to Algonquin, where it was found dead, I don't know. Is that an inside job, or was this just a crazy moose? the one moose that ever migrated any long distance. It just happens to be the moose that took the very trail that they're going to call Algonquin to Adirondack. This whole thing about this treaty, this modern treaty with the Algonquins, of who the government don't give a damn about, is simply another one of the templates from the United Nations, whose job is to end nation states. Now, if you're the government, the federal government or the provincial government of your so-called nation, and you know you're part of it because all the countries are member states of the United Nations, you know the United Nations desire is the end of nation states. Now, our parliamentarians are implementing the UN agenda and have been for many decades now. And this is absolutely treasonous as far as the people are concerned. It's a breach of trust. But they're just stepping up to the plate. And the plan here is it's a heavily, a lot of cottagers, and this is going to go across a bunch of towns. And obviously, if it gets to the Parliament building, it's just taking up part of Ottawa, the city. And the idea is to move people into ever higher density housing, move them off the land, rewild the land. And they'll say, well, yes, but for those who all land in private hands will be left untouched. Well, that's kind of an interesting way to say that. All land in private hands will be left untouched. Well, what they're talking about is in the future, it will be untouched because nobody's going to be living there. They're going to use the native people to move the people off the land. Instead of the government saying, oh, well, because we're pushing the UN agenda and this is the rewilding, we got to get you out of there. We got to shut these small towns down, which is going on more rapidly all the time. They go in, they shut down the gas stations, they shut down the banks, they shut down the grocery stores. And those people living in those towns end up moving into larger towns, which is the plan. So the native people are being used to fulfill the obligations that our federal government has signed on to with the United Nations, but they don't want to tell you what they're doing because they're criminals. And anybody who's met a politician knows they can't tell the truth. So the native people, and it's happened in different areas here already, the plan anyways, is that the people who are trying to get to their homes or their cottages are likely going to end up paying a toll charge for the road they're driving on, or they're going to pay fees for access, and these will continue to go up, and it will get more crazy all the time until such time as the people just say, screw this, and move out. And at that time, all lands in private hands will be left untouched. That's the rewilding. It will be untouched land. Now, it goes, they're so happy. I mean, these people are nuts. A decommissioned military base in Ottawa, CFB Rockcliffe Park, situated in a prosperous neighborhood of the city, is also expected to be part of the final treaty. There will be no new First Nations created as part of this treaty. Ontario and the federal government and the Algonquins of Ontario have been negotiating for 24 years, but the Algonquins have laid claim to the land for more than 250 years, and they claim the Crown never extinguished their title to the land with the signing of a treaty. Although they never got to use the land. Bennett said the agreement is historic and that it would be the first modern-day treaty in Ontario. Well, what do you mean modern day? According to the Algonquins, that treaty was over 250 years old. How is this a modern treaty? but that's the way we do things here, and could serve as a model. It's always about getting a model out there, serve for a model for negotiations with other First Nations people across Canada. Now, if there's any Native people listening, you're being used. Now, how ridiculous is this? The United Nations has the human rights, universal human rights. Now, they also have the indigenous rights. Well, I saw a writer one time, he said, what the hell's going on here? If this is a universal human rights doctrine out of the United Nations, and then you have the indigenous rights. Are indigenous people not human? Well, you're not human either, but that's another story. So they're using the natives. That's the Idle No More. That came straight out of the United Nations. It's a takedown. It's the takedown without the bombs they use over in the Middle East. They can't bomb us here. That won't fly. So we're going to do it a different way. That's why I call it a spiritual psychological war, which it is. Let's see here. We were once wealthy. We lived well off the land. Kirk White Duck, the chief of the Algonquins of the Pikwanikan, the largest First Nations reserve in the territory, said, then we were begging for a piece of land. The agreement in principle is more of a weight off our shoulders, not so much a celebration. A key element of the agreement will be a cash payment. Although Bennett was unable to provide the exact sum, earlier negotiation pegged the figure around $300 million, but White Duck said that amount is more of a floor than a ceiling, so they're looking for a lot more than $300 million. That's like, at this point, financial figure that's on the table, White Duck said in an interview with CBC News, pointing to the valuable land that will be signed over to his people. It may change because we're not done negotiations yet. We hope to improve upon that. It's not the whole package. Robert Potts, the senior negotiator for the Algonquin claim, said all told the money available to Algonquins will be much more than $300 million. There's a significant package that's being built as we move further down the line, as we move towards a treaty, but it's considerably larger than what we are seeing on the face of it. Potts said, adding, any payment will be tax-free, making it more valuable. Bennett presented White Duck with a box at the signing ceremony to symbolize renewed relationship, but the box was empty, prompting White Duck to joke, we plan to fill it up. Who is an Algonquin? Now there's another problem. Who is an Algonquin? Another point of contention is just who qualifies as an Algonquin under the agreement. Chiefs have previously raised red flags about the loose criteria used to determine eligibility, saying it lumps in many non-Indigenous peoples who do not have a recent family tie to First Nations people who identify as Algonquin. White Duck said that they would consult with genealogists and other experts to determine who can lay claim to the benefits that will flow from a final treaty agreement. It can't just be of descent. It's a point of contention, and it's something we're currently working on right now. There's some guidance in law and jurisprudence, but that we're trying to look at very closely, he said. You can't just be of descent. If you don't exercise your Algonquin rights and belong to a collective, geez, that sounds kind of United Nation-y, doesn't it? Belong to a collective, you don't necessarily have Aboriginal rights according to the law, which is corporate law, but there are cases of extenuating circumstances that we have to consider. He said it is difficult to estimate how many beneficiaries there will be, but he's estimated it's roughly 7,000 to 8,000. You have to demonstrate you have a social or cultural connection to one of these communities, Potts said. I can assure you a tremendous amount of effort and thought will be going into this. So you can pretty much bank that the government cost, the lawyer's cost, will far exceed the money that the native Algonquins are going to receive. This is another case of you, the taxpayer, being robbed. Now, if this only works for 7,000 to 8,000 people, 7,000 to 8,000 people over 36,000 square kilometers, that's a fair chunk of land for 8,000 people. Our town here is 7,500 people, and it's probably, I'm pushing it. The town here of 7,500 people, I highly doubt, is 2 square miles. It'll be somewhere fairly close. It's probably 1.5 miles wide and about 2 miles long, something like that. And that's 7,500 people. And so these 7,500, because that's between 7,000 and 8,000, are going to be sitting on 20,000 square miles. And what they're going to do is once they run the white people off the land, then the Chinese are coming, and they'll be setting up plants. And the Indians will get screwed over on that deal because they want the resources. They'll end up building their plants over here so they don't have to ship the raw materials from here over to China and then manufacture and ship them back. This is all corporate. It is all a fraud. And the people should be up in arms, all the people. Now, we have chiefs here saying that the Algonquin land claim deal is illegal and fraudulent. That's interesting. It says here even the Prime Minister, that would be Justin Tinkerbell Trudeau, could qualify as Algonquin under criteria set to determine eligibility for ratification vote, says the chiefs. So there's the Parliament buildings, and apparently that's part of the treaty land. A historic land claim agreement in principle struck by the Algonquins of Ontario with the federal and provincial governments is being denounced as fraudulent and illegal by chiefs of a number of Iroquois and Algonquin First Nations. They charge that the vast majority of the Algonquins of Ontario are not actually Algonquin or even Aboriginal. Indeed, the chiefs say even Prime Minister Tinkerbell Trudeau could technically qualify as an Algonquin. While non-Indigenous people are entitled to vote on and benefit from the deal, the chiefs say other legitimate First Nations whose traditional territory overlaps the Algonquin land claim have been ignored while their rights were bargained away. The claim, the largest being negotiated in Ontario, covers a territory of 36,000 square miles, including Parliament Hill. Among other things, the proposed deal would transfer 117,000 acres of Crown land to Algonquin ownership to provide a $300 million settlement. If successful, it would become the province's first modern-day constitutionally protected treaty. The agreement in principle, which is in the midst of a ratification vote, was denounced Thursday by the chiefs of 4 Algonquin First Nations who said the land claim overlaps almost 900,000 acres of their territory. Lance Heyman, chief of the Caboweek First Nations, said the vast majority of the Algonquins of Ontario are not Algonquin at all, but non-Indigenous people who claim a loose connection to the Algonquin root ancestor. In many cases, those eligible to vote on the land claim deal have not had any intermarriage with Algonquins for more than 200 years, according to a genealogical analysis done for the chiefs. Trudeau could technically fit in. The Algonquins of Ontario do not have the moral or legal obligation to negotiate away all the rights of the Algonquin people, he said. Heyman said Trudeau's fledgling government is not to blame for the situation, but given Trudeau's vote to create a new, respectful, nation-to-nation relationship with First Nations has an obligation to fix it. The deal was also denounced by the Iroquois Caucus, which represents several Iroquois communities in Ontario and Quebec. What has happened is, I will call it, fraudulent. Kawanaki Grand Chief Joe Norton told a news conference. An illegal deal, this is a quote from him, an illegal deal has been made, has been struck to bring in people who are not Algonquins, who are not in any way attached to the land, who have not strived and struggled for centuries to try and maintain the integrity of the lands within Ontario, unquote. Norton said the claim involves lands continuously occupied by Iroquois, yet they have more or less been pushed aside for people who have no right to any of this territory. The Algonquins of Ontario consist of the federally recognized Pikwakanagan First Nation and 9 other communities where people claim Algonquin ancestry. The Ontario Algonquin principal and negotiator Robert Potts has said the inclusion of non-status descendants of Aboriginals is intended to correct a historic injustice wherein many bands were never recognized under the Indian Act. He also said the criteria for determining descendants has been stringent, involving a genealogist, a ratification committee, and a retired judge. Indigenous Affairs Minister Carolyn Bennett's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Well, I'm going to have to phone her office because this thing, like most things that come out of the so-called government offices, is either a deception, deceitful, a fraud, theft. So there's something really, really, really smelling going on here, but you know it's all part of the UN agenda. That's all our governments have been doing for decades now. Obamacare is a UN agenda thing. Our new negotiation for our health care said this years ago. It's going to be a melding of the two systems somehow because they want to join these two countries together. Because, again, it's about end of the nation state, isn't it? End of the United States, end of Canada, end of Mexico. And everything has to be melded together. And it's a race to the bottom. And that's out of the UN documents. The people in the West live too good and use up too many resources, so we got to drive you into the ground. And that's exactly what they're doing. So this is a story that I'm going to look into a little bit deeper. This is a huge, huge, huge chunk of ground. And the natives, at least some of them get it, that it's a fraud. Now, I don't know who these non-indigenous people are who are stepping up to the plate, but you can pretty much bet that it's either a high finance guy or gal or family of politicians. There's something going on here that really stinks to high heaven. But the big game here is to turn the people against the people. Okay? You want to call it a civil war, call it whatever you want to call it, but you got the natives fighting against each other. You got the people that live in these areas that are going to be negatively impacted. It is genocide, because genocide is nothing more than the destruction of a society, and that is what's going on here. Now, I see another cop has been busted for child porn. Seems to be getting pretty regular. I saw a story go by somewhere just before I come on air, not sure where, but somewhere down in the States. Some guy got busted for raping a child, and the judge gave him the sentence, which should shake anybody to the core, for child rape. The man went to jail, or has been sentenced to a extremely lengthy jail term, which should really upset anybody that still has any moral value in them whatsoever. This gentleman was sentenced to the grand total for child rape of 60 days. And that again is coming out of the UN. These are a satanic lot of sons of bitches. That's where your early sex education come from, was the United Nations. And we really need to stop turning the other cheek, so to speak. We really, really, really need to give our heads a shake and step up to the plate here. Now, here's another story. Most Ontarians say justice system broken, says a survey. Survey says most Ontarians say justice system is broken. No shit. It's not a justice system. It's a corporate system. It has nothing to do with justice. It is the opposite of justice. Okay? It's injustice against the people. Again, I've said this before, and I find it rather fascinating that it was actually in a law dictionary, is that legal is the antithesis of lawful. Okay, is the opposite. Lawful being moral, equitable, and just, and legal being the opposite of those three terms. So, is the justice system broken? It never existed. How can something that never existed be broken? We never had a justice system here. We have a system of corporate law, corporate rules, regulations, and bylaws. That's what we have. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with justice, because the legal system, by definition, is the opposite of lawful, which is justice. And it is moral. The Action Group on Access to Justice, TAG, you're it, come to court, I guess is what TAG stands for, is it? Asked Ontarians to describe the centuries-old system in a recent survey in a poll of 1,500 adults by Abacus Data Inc. In August. The verdict the advocacy body retrieved was damning. 78% called Ontario's justice system old-fashioned. 71% said it was intimidating, confusing, inefficient, and broken. Was how more than 60% of the respondents described it. At a time when sexual assault cases and continued complaints that the black community is being targeted by police are demanding public attention, only half of those surveyed feel there is equal and fair system access to the system, and few, just 13%, felt strongly that they would be treated fairly by the system. The justice system is there for the public, and if they're not on side, then no solution can really reach its full potential in terms of impact, said TAG manager Sabrina Delahan. It's the first time the group, founded 2 years ago and supported by the Law Society of Upper Canada and the Law Foundation of Ontario, has polled public opinion on access issues. The report does confirm what we've heard anecdotally for around cost, intimidation, and frustration, but I think it also helps us understand or appreciate access to justice affects the most important things in your life, your family, where you live, where you work, Ellen said. Recent headlines, she said, have created a new appreciation that the justice system matters, but few people feel in control of that process. Well, of course they don't feel in control of the process because it's run by lawyers. It's run by the Law Society of Upper Canada. It is written in legalese, which is not a language except for lawyers, and nobody else seems to understand this stupid language. It's a jargon language which is used to deceive and gain the upper hand. So how is this a justice system again? It's not. It's a complete and total fraud. You don't need a poll to say that the system's broken. You need a poll where the people explain to the pollsters that the system never existed. Not a justice system, an injustice system, yes, or just us system, yes. But never has there been a justice system on these lands. But they won't ever ask that question because they're manipulating again. Okay? Published results of the survey also follow a Supreme Court decision on unjust delays that ruled provincial courts should find a way to ensure cases do not take longer than 18 months, a decision that, as the Star reported, could result in even serious charges such as murder and sexual assault being thrown out. Those surveyed say affording a lawyer or paralegal is the biggest barrier to justice. What's surprising, Dellen said, is that affordability is an issue across income brackets. A large majority, 76%, said creating more affordable options for those not qualifying for legal aid is a top priority. There are many ways in which access to justice is limited. Longtime civil rights advocate and lawyer Peter Rosenthal wrote by email, only wealthy or upper middle class people can really afford to hire lawyers. Legal aid is the only available to very poor and only for certain kinds of cases. Therefore, many people are denied essential representation in criminal and civil cases. Daniel Brown, a Toronto criminal lawyer and director of the Criminal Lawyers Association, said the affordability concerns are the most troubling issue. Access to justice should not be reserved for only the wealthy. Significant cuts to Ontario's legal aid programs have made it almost impossible for the working class to access our justice system. See, it's our justice system. It's their justice system. It has nothing whatsoever to do with you. It is their justice system. Legal aid have made it almost impossible for the working class to access our justice system, he wrote in an email. Better funding for lawyers who represent our most marginalized citizens is an important first step to ensuring that all Ontarians have equal access to the courts. Peter Shabbos, partner at Blake Law Firm and treasurer of the Law Society, said access issues have been front and center in the legal system for many years. We're trying to take steps, creative steps, to work with all the stakeholders to improve access of justice. Well, you know this also is coming out of the United Nations. Okay, this is about international law. This is about rebranding our law system with a bunch of garbage about making it more accessible, this, that, and the other thing. When in fact, what they're going to do is they're going to start more along the lines of what they already are doing, which is administrative, because it's a legal system, it's a corporate system, so it's not judicial, it's administrative. But instead of clogging up the courts, they're already doing tests here. I think they're doing them in the United States, where you don't even get to go to court. They want to take any of what they call the lesser crimes, the non-victim crimes, which are most of the crimes, and set it up with arbitrary situation where you get the ticket. You can go to somebody probably making minimum wage or slightly over. You can plead your case to them. They don't have to listen to you. And they have the capacity, or will have the capacity, to, if your story resonates with the administrator, which is not in a court, it'll be like a kiosk in the frickin' mall, and you can go there and sit down with them and plead your case, and they have the authority to give you a lower fine, but you're still getting fined because you got the summons and there's no court to take it to. This is what's going on here. That's why these polls are being done. The system is inaccessible because it's supposed to be inaccessible, because if it was accessible, then they wouldn't be able to put the kiosks in the malls. Now, the Toronto Star knows exactly what they're writing. Problem is, the readers don't know what they're reading. That's the sick part. These newspapers should be taken out back and whooped. Okay, they deserve 100 lashes because they are lying to their readers. Now, these guys write this stuff. I'm sure Winston from 1984 would be pleased at how well these guys write, the way he wrote in 1984. Here's the problem. How are we going to spin it to the people? Well, we've got a staff of, might as well call the newspapers a ministry of truth, because that's what they're firing out. This is all 1984 garbage. It's their linguistics. It's the way they write. And they write this way to deceive the people, because when people read this, they're going to be saying, yeah, I couldn't lawyer, and then it cost me this, it cost me that, this ain't fair, yada, 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 whining, bitching and complaining, and not even understanding how to read the article. They think the Toronto Star is on their side. They think the Law Society somehow is on their side. They think that these people in this story want to make it better and easier for you. Now, you're going to have drive-through kiosks. You know, you could go to the Tim Hortons coffee in the morning and plead your case maybe while you're waiting for your coffee. This is how ridiculous this is, but that's all being written up so that we care and we see the problems and we want to fix the problems for you, and we're getting some input from the people, and we're really pleased. Oh, Jesus, make you puke. The problem is that most people reading this trash don't understand what the hell they're reading. And for that, the Toronto Star and every other major newspaper and magazine in this so-called country should be put behind bars. These are criminals. And what really bothers me is that people go out and buy this shit. It's really, really pathetic. Now, I got one more story here, maybe more, I don't know. Where is that other one here? Boom. Where did I get that one at? Where did that one go? Oh, here we go. Now, I'm not up for putting people in nursing homes, although both my in-laws were there, but for a very short period of time, really. We looked after him until it just was over. And, we managed to keep him out of the home for a good 5 years after other members of the family wanted to put him in the home. Is it work? Yeah, it's work, but it's your family. Unfortunately, nowadays, people think you just shovel them off to the government because the government is really the family, and the government will look after them, so you don't have to. And that is really, a moral problem with our so-called society. They're your family. Look after them. But this is really quite sad. It says pharmacies pay millions in bed fees to Ontario nursing homes. A Star investigation, I love these things, a Star investigation. The Star investigated the law and gave us a pretty phony story. And this stuff's been common knowledge. Jane Meadus, a lawyer with the Advocacy Center for the Elderly, called the fees charged by nursing homes to pharmacies a dirty little secret of the industry. Now, the so-called government, which of course is a corporation, has privatized, if not all, most of the senior homes, and it's always about profit. It's not about health. It's not about wellness, although they like to use those words. It's about business, okay? It's about making a buck. And you and I and the elderly we're the ones that they make the buck from. Okay, we're their clientele, so to speak. Now, the government, the so-called government, licenses these homes. They are supposed to know what's going on here, and I'm sure they do. But the newspaper's not going to tell you that. So we get another one of these goofy stories. For the lucrative rights to dispense publicly funded drugs to Ontario nursing homes, pharmacies must pay the homes millions of dollars in secret per residence bed fees, a Star investigation reveals. Ooh. Seniors advocates presented with the Star's findings says this practice raises serious accountability questions. What is happening with that money? We have to know. There is no transparency, said Jane Mead, is a lawyer for the Advocacy Center for the Elderly. Well, the fact she's a lawyer puts her in a little bit of disrepute here. Disrepute. It is the dirty little secret of the industry that homes are requiring pharmacies to pay in order to get a contract. Well, it's all about money, isn't it? And Granny and Grandpa, if they weren't in the home, this shit wouldn't be going on. It's always about the money. The 77,000 seniors in Ontario nursing homes are a captive market. Beautiful. Monopoly. Pharmacies compete for a share of an annual $370 million pool of public and resident money to supply and dispense drugs to 630 homes. Medicines for ill residents, blood thinners, antidepressants, and a host of other drugs. It's big business. And a small number of pharmacies have a monopoly at individual homes. To secure these dispensing rights, pharmacies are typically asked by nursing homes to pay between $10 and $70 per resident per month. Not all homes demand the payments. A conservative estimate by the Star, based on information from sources and documents, puts the total amount paid by pharmacies to secure nursing home contracts in Ontario at more than $20 million a year. Now, these are private homes, right? So they're charging the state, they're charging the people. The people built these homes, and then they were privatized for the most part. So you put your family member in there, and it's a revolving dollar game, right? Now, how much money are the doctors getting kicked back? I don't know. What I do know is the number of people taking pharmaceutical drugs is through the freaking roof. Now, I did talk to a pharmacist that I know here and asked what percentage of the people were taking pharmaceutical drugs. And I thought I was high at 60%. She laughed, and we kept working our way up until I hit 90, and then I am accusing the pharmacist of pulling my leg, and she's telling me, no, I'm not pulling your leg. It's at least, if not higher, it's at least 90%. 90% of the population in this little town taking pharmaceuticals. So what better place to sell pharmaceuticals than to the old age homes? A lot of these people don't even know what drugs they're taking or why they're taking them. So they just fill them full until they die. Or they have a reaction, then they need a new drug. So my advice to you is that you owe it to your family member to keep the hell out of these places. These places are not there for your family's health. They're there because your family member is a cash cow. Okay? Get that through your thick skull. They're cash cows. And when they get too feeble or too much trouble, a little overdose here or a different pill there with a bad reaction, and well, that problem's solved, bring on the next one. And that's what's going on with your family members, and it sickens me to death that this is what we do with our people. But then we do with them from the time they're born. We start sticking needles into their arms as soon as they're born, and we continue to do so until they go out the other end. So you, from the moment you're born till they kill you off, it's about cash. That's all it's ever been about, cash. But then we're not in the lawful system, are we? We're in the legal system. And legal is corporate. Make no mistake about it. The police and everybody else that is involved with the government take an oath. And the oath says that they promise to be loyal to the Queen and Canada, which is the same thing. Okay? Queen and Canada, same thing. And the Queen is at the apex of the legal and political systems, which is corporate. Now, so they take an oath to be loyal to the Queen and Canada. When you look up the word loyal in etymology, what word pops up? Legal. Okay? So it's about the business of the crown, is all it's about. And these people who take the oath are loyal in the legal system, which is the corporate system, to protect it for the Queen and Canada, which is the corporation. And they feed off of you. Government has no money, so they take your money. Government is not responsible. Nobody in the government's ever held responsible. And it makes sense because we were given responsible government. We didn't create it. We were given it with the caveat that responsible, the word responsible government does not have the definition, the dictionary definition of the word responsible. So we know they're irresponsible because they're never obligated or held liable to anything. And that's what irresponsible is. Responsible, that's what they made you. You're obligated, you are chargeable, you are accountable, and so on and so forth, where the government is not. That's why they can go out and blow gazillions of dollars all over Hell's Half Acre and never anybody be accountable for any screw-up that takes place. So this gives them the opportunity to manufacture screw-ups so that their consultants, their friends, their lawyer friends, their marketing friends, feed on this stuff. So we're out on numerous, and it just seems to get worse all the time, numerous screw-ups in the $1 billion range, the $500 million range, and nobody is ever held accountable for their incompetence. Nobody ever loses their job because of their incompetence. We just get put on the hook for the cash. And we're the cash cow. We are the cows. We are the slaves. And we're the ones that get stuck on the hook for everything that goes wrong. And that has to change. But as far as your family is concerned, please, unless you really hate your family, then I guess maybe you could see a moral reason why they would stick them in one of these places. But it's not where you want your family, folks. Okay? I mean, they just keep driving them drugs down their throats and until they whack them. And then there's lots of new people, right? People are always looking, the homes are always full, and there's always a waiting list. And so what kind of shape is the one who wants to come in? Well, they're pretty good shape. Fine. Go through the list here. Find the ones that are really giving us a hard time or are becoming more feeble. Get rid of them and bring in the new one. Now, sound a little rude from my part, but I even have some of the medical profession here agreeing with me that our hospital has turned into a killing grounds. And it's happening more and more all the time. Again, it's too costly. Again, it's people that are destroying the planet. And the less people we have, the better the planet is going to be. So we have all the reason in the world to be shoving all these pharmaceutical drugs down people's throats and either making them suicidal or making them ill and having them leave this planet far sooner than they should have. So this is the world we live in. And we need to change the world. Now, are we obligated to the corporation? Absolutely not. But are we obligated to each other? Absolutely yes. And I've written this so many times, it's sick, that we have an obligation to the children, the grandchildren, and those not yet born. We also have an obligation to our forefathers who left their homelands to get out from underneath the Buddha tyranny, to start anew in what they thought was a free land. Well, they got hoodwinked. They were simply brought here in order to people the lands, in order to make the claim legitimate for the corporation that sent them here, for the armies that destroyed the peoples that were already here. We didn't integrate with the native people. We wiped them out and then threw them on reserves. And as a lady said to me, the reserve has got to be 6 years ago now at least. When I asked her if she understood the plan for Whitey, and she was so calm about it, and she looked at me and she just nodded her head in the affirmative, and I asked her how it is she gets it so easy. And I've been talking to Whitey for so long, it's like beating my head on a wall. And she said, it's simple. We lived through it. Now it's your turn. And she was absolutely correct. Just as the corporation, it wasn't the people that genocided the natives, it was the corporation that genocided the people. It was the armies and the police and that genocided the natives. It wasn't the people who came here to get away from the Buddha tyranny. It was a corporation. And today it's the corporation still. Only you're headed to the reserve this time. It's called high-density housing by a light rail transit system. They're going to control your food. They're going to control your health. They already do. They took your children away from you. They put the mothers into the workplace in order to get the state's hands on the children. And both parents are usually too tired, too busy to even wonder what the hell's going on in the schools. Just like they took the native children away from the families and put them in the natives in the corporate schools to re-educate them. And that's exactly what's going on in the schools today. So don't think you're special, people. What the corporation did to the natives, the corporation is now doing to you. And the native people and the good people that came here to get away from tyranny, we need to join together, not fight against each other. Anyways, that sounds like the end of the show. It sounds like I'm preaching and ranting, but that's just the way it is. Back Thursday night, thank you. Rock the motivation by.tv.
It's only for they want. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, they burn the kids. No one makes countries laugh to your face, fight and die. 'Cause God will give.
This is JJ Inc.